as we fire up day 2 here, couple of reminders to put out there. When we're starting to look at these, I'm just making sure I'm putting my stuff in the right place. Okay. When we're starting to look at these, the biggest thing to remember with sine and cosine is that your period is always going to be worked out as 2 pi over b. And so, when we start to get these situated, and again, amplitude, the only note we're going to put in here, it's always positive, but negatives still happen. So let me explain what that means, because that seems to kind of contradict itself. So when we're looking at these, what we're going to be taking a look at is amplitude is a distance. We've talked about distance being like absolute value before. So that's where the always positive part comes in. But if you have a negative amplitude, yes, it can flip your graph the other way. So instead of your sine going up and then down, if it's negative, it'll go down and then up. So a little bit on the kooky side, but something that's not going to be too bad. So we will do this one that still only does one piece like yesterday, but then we'll kind of start to grow this back out a little bit. Grab one thing over here. Yep, that's that for now. All right, so here I don't have a number in front. My amplitude is still 1, okay? But my b value is 1/2, and we started to talk a little bit about this yesterday. We can't get sucked into making a math error here. When we do 2 pi divided by b, okay, 2 pi divided by 1/2 is not pi. Okay, we're not dividing by 2. So if you've got to do a little side work to remind yourself, remember, if you divide by 1/2, that is the same as multiplying by 2, or 2 over 1. So your period would be 4 pi. And so when we start to take a peek at these, when I'm going to make my graph, so it says 1 complete cycle. We're not getting cute yet. So as we saw yesterday, sort of like when you're thinking going all the way around a unit circle, 0, 0, 90, 180, 270, 360, there's going to be 5 points. So we start at 0, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Start at 0. Whatever your period is, that's where we end. So my job becomes to come up with all the stuff in between. And we started to take a peek at this yesterday. Yeah. What's that? Because there is no number in front. Yeah, if I had a number in front, it would change. Yep. So once I get here, again, playing the halvesies game or the midpoint game is going to be your way to go. So I'm looking, okay, between 0 and 4, I can handle this. Between 0 and 4 is 2 in the middle. And then I play halvesies one more time with the middle at the beginning. And between 0 and 2 is 1. And then I can just count. 0, 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi. End up where I'm supposed to be. So there's my 5 points to complete one cycle. So now the only thing left, since my amplitude is 1, bless you, we know we'll go as high as +1 and as low as -1. And the only thing I have to remember now is, oh crap, which pattern is it again? Oh yeah, cosine, we start on the cliff and we dive in. So typically cosine starts at 1, goes down to 0, goes under, so it's like we're diving, we went underwater, we're back to the surface, back up to the top of the dive. So 1, 0, -1, 0, 1. And again, cosine looks a little more like a parabola. I mean, it's not, but again, we don't want to go V-shape here. These are curves, no matter what. And if I needed to keep going, if I needed to show more cycles, I could. The pattern would just continue, and I can expand these, and that's what we're going to look at next. So what happens if I get a blend of, ooh, my amplitude is changing, ooh, my period's changing too, what the heck? Okay, so let's see here. So my amplitude is 3. So I know we're going as high as 3. We're going as low as -3. So this one's going to go a little higher and a little lower than the last one. My B value is 2. So my period is 2 pi over B, or pi. In other words, we're going to get a whole cycle done in pi. But this time, here comes the new piece. We've been given an interval to graph this in between -pi and +2 pi. So we're going to do our first one with the knowledge that we're going to have more to do, because this first set that I draw, okay, is going to end at pi. But I know I got to go longer than that, and I even got to go negative. But we're not going to worry about that yet. So I get here. Here we go at the halvesies game again. In between 0 and 1 pi, between 0 and 1 is a half. So we do pi over 2. In between 0 and a half is a quarter. Now again, if you're like, Artie, let me get out of here. What if that's something I kind of struggle with? Well, okay, then just do 1/2 divided by 2, math, enter, enter. Okay, oh, 1 over 4, it's pi over 4. If you need a little help, that's okay. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, or 1. But I'm actually going to take that a step further this time, because I got to cover all this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep counting. So I'm like, okay, so now what? We'll keep adding pi over 4. So 5 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4, but again, we reduce. That's what we do. 7 pi over 4. And 8 pi over 4, which is known as 2 pi. So when you are making your lines, you do want to give a little bit of attention to this at the start, so you don't like space out your 4 out to here. They're like, oh crud, and you're having to add more at the end. And if I want to go to negative, it's the same thing. I'm just going to be subtracting 1 pi over 4 each time. So negative pi over 4, negative 2 pi over 4, reduced of course. Negative 3 pi over 4. And negative 4 pi over 4, known as negative pi. Hey, dude, that's a lot to have to graph. Okay, but check this out. Our original one we did here, once we have this, we're just going to follow the pattern. So, we're back to sine again. So sine, remember, originally, our sine starts at 0, then goes up, back to 0, down, and back again. But we have an amplitude value this time. So all of those are going to get multiplied by 3. So there are your original 5 points to plot here between 0 and pi. So I just kind of go, all right, so 0, 3, 0, negative 3, 0. And just one other point as we kind of get this first one drawn in. when you're trying to figure out your graph and get it set up, you're always going to want to deal with your period stuff first. You're going to want this stuff situated, because if you don't, you may make the mistake of doing, 0, pi over 2 pi, and doing a regular 2 pi, like, oh, I screwed that up, I got to go back to it again. So always take care of this stuff first, so we don't have to go back and do a bunch of scribbling or start over with that. So now what do I have to do? Do I have to do this whole thing again? No, just keep the pattern going. So you're like, all right, so here I'm kind of starting here. Up, back to the middle, back to the bottom, back to the middle. Just keep it right on going. And you may be wondering, well, wait a minute. Why are there only 4 points this time in the pattern? Because this is the starting point for this one and the ending point for this one. They share that point. So it's still 5 points, just like it was on there. And this one is a little trickier because I'm going backwards now. So I come down and back up to the top, and back down. And I've covered my whole interval. So we can go to the left, we can go to the right, it doesn't matter. As long as we get the first one down, we're going to be in really good shape. That's what I wanted the whole time. What the heck? All right. One last one to play with. Well, 1.5 we'll call it. 1.5. Much shorter today, as you can see, though. You're actually getting some time to play with these. So look, I'm like, okay. My A value is 4, so this time, all right. But here, my B value is 1/2. Again, if your B value is less than 1, it means your period is stretching out more, not getting less. It would. 2 pi divided by 1/2 is the same as multiplying it by 2. 4 pi. We saw this up above, so we can kind of use that as a cheat if we want to. At first you look at that, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to take a huge amount. Well, no, it's not. That's just one cycle on each side. It is going to go one cycle this way. And again, I know it's up above, but I'm going to pretend it's not there. Play halvesies. In between 0 and 4 is 2. In between 0 and 2 is 1. 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. And just copy it going the other way. I don't even have to do anything cute. Except, of course, they're negative. Don't forget that part. And then the only other thing of caution here is remembering, okay, this is cosine. So with cosine, you start at 1, go down, underwater, back to the surface, back up to the top. And since my A value is 4, and I've got my points to play with. And now it's just a copying game of making sure I had my x-axis set up correctly. Should be a piece of cake at this point. So anything we're asked for, and if it doesn't give any sort of a restriction here, you're only being asked to complete a cycle. So that's not going to be anything that should be that should be too complex. So, last piece of the puzzle. No graphing on this last piece. It's just understanding, again, where stuff is coming from. Amplitude, I admit, should not be a problem. It's just the number that's in front, okay? We're going to multiply our base numbers by that. Period, we've got to make sure. So when you're doing it, I'm even going to do it horizontally this time to make it a little more clear. What's that? Let's see. Dividing by 2/3 is the same as multiplying by 3/2. And yes, last I checked, 6 pi divided by 2 is 3 pi. Because again, if you're dividing by something that's less than 1, it's going to get bigger. So again, using the calculator for that, doing a quick side work like this is not a bad idea. And if it's a whole number, then literally you're just going to put it underneath. You're done. I can't reduce 2/5. If it had been 4, of course, I need to reduce it. But other than that, we're not going to worry too much about that. So, here's the deal. It's going to look kind of familiar. In the practice, now you know all the things to be able to knock these out. Like I said yesterday, if you have the blank graphs, make sure you're labeling your axes. If you need to change something or add something in because maybe it got squished together, maybe it expanded, make sure you're doing that. But I don't need you to show me every single point and label it. I know for the odds, if you're looking at those, they are. I'm more interested that this is right and I'm seeing the right height of your points when you're working on